Ayo, how you doing? I hope you're all well. I'm reading some nuclear revenge on Reddit. If you're seeing this on YouTube, it was streamed live on my Twitch. Check it out or I'll steal your kneecaps. And if you're seeing this on Twitch, it'll soon be on my YouTube channel. Check that out soon too. Now then, let's go. Site manager neglected to take care of my property. So I cost the property management company over $500,000. Now that's a decent chunk of change. Let's find out how they did it, shall we? Some background. I, 35 male, own a 72 units apartment complex. When I bought it, it was in good shape, and I spent several million getting all the apartments renovated. The rent wasn't increased for any of the tenants, and I made sure that it never went up by more than $50 a year for lease renewals, baked into the leases. Shortly after all the renovations were completed, I started the search for a property management company, and ultimately settled on one that seemed well aligned with wanting to put the tenants first. As we were doing the contracts, I had my real estate friend also look at them. Between him and my lawyer, they recommended having a clause added in there. The short of it is, if there are any legal actions brought up against me for the apartment complex due to neglect of the property management staff, the property management will be responsible for all those costs and any legal fees incurred. This wasn't added in secret, mind you, and the legal team for the property management company agreed, and everything was finalized. They took over the management of the complex a month later. I was fairly hands-off and only visited the site every 3 to 4 months. Other than that, I'd have the monthly update sent to me by the manager on site. A few months ago, I found out that a couple of the apartments had been left in severe shambles after the tenants moved out, and the cleaning crew we had took care of it. I didn't find out until after the fact that not only was not completely accurate, because one of the apartments apparently had a bad roach infestation in the storage closet outside the apartment. After the new tenants moved into that apartment, they brought up the issue to the site manager. In the monthly reporting, the site manager claimed that maintenance staff tried to address it with traps and bug bombs. I didn't think too much of it and left it at that. Next month, the same thing. And the third month, after receiving the monthly report, I called the site manager stating that there is a reoccurring issue and I want it taken care of professionally at that point. The month's rent was waived for the tenants in that apartment, and they were put up at a hotel for a week while the issue was to be addressed. Once they returned to their apartments is when the issue started. The site manager, either by mistake or by negligence, didn't communicate with the exterminators the extent of the location of the infestation. Instead of the storage closet, the apartment was fumigated, and after that, the roaches made their way into the other apartments in the same building, and the nearest building, and the problem got so much worse. The same option was given to all the tenants in that building, waiving the month's rent and putting them up in the hotel for a week while the issue was addressed. They all took that offer up, however one of the tenants decided to take legal action. While I wasn't happy about it, I understood where they were coming from, having their lives disrupted by something that should have been addressed properly to start. As we were amidst negotiating with them during mediations, my lawyer reminded me of the clause with the property management company and suggested we give them what they want. And that is where I started my nuclear revenge. I had the rest of the tenants from the 2 impacted buildings be suggested to anonymously that one of the tenants had filed a lawsuit for the damage, and that they should do the same by getting in on it. Through the mediation, I pretended to be outraged at the whole matter. The negotiation started at 3 months of free rent, but ultimately we all settled on 1 year of free rent for all those tenants. Overall, that came out to 16 apartments with rent averaging from $1,700 monthly that the property management had to pay for due to the negligence of the site manager, equaling to roughly $325,000 in just the lost rent they had to pay for. And the cherry on top, due to the breach in service for property maintenance, they also have to provide free services for up to 6 months while I seek out a new property management company, costing them an additional $146,000, and still pay for the legal fees on top of that. TLDR, site manager screwed with my tenants' homes, so I cost the property management company over $500,000 in damages, lost rent, and legal fees. Very nice. Very nice indeed. Okay, let's see here. Yep, it's up. Tell others I hit my dog. You'll see what's coming for you. Me and my husband, 28 female, 29 male, are in a chicken breeding club which provides an allotment garden-like structure. We joined a year ago and have got to know Klaus, an old man who actually lives in one of those said gardens. At first he was very kind, helped us out 1 or 2 times, but after a while he got very greedy, telling us to help him in his garden, selling stuff for him on eBay, or care for his chickens. Some people said we should keep our distance from him, but we didn't listen. He regularly invited us to drink a beer with him, acted like he knew all of town, and is well known and has lots of connections. But the real thing was, yes, he was known, but for all the wrong reasons. We talked to him a lot in the first few months, and noticed he was highly addicted to alcohol, and tries to make a dime out of everyone and everything. You know the saying, blood is thicker than water? Not for him, lol. At first he helped us out, for example, with getting us some tools for free, or giving us money for working over at his place. Also, we kinda felt bad for him. Living your last days in a garden shed? But after a while, he gave us near to nothing for our work. No money, broken tools, so garbage we had to dispose of, and not even a thank you. He also started to talk to us in a very demanding tone, old male Karen-like. Instead of messing with him, we started to simply decrease the distance we had from him, and not doing any more work. His last effort to win us back was to buy 20 weed plants and put them in his garden and showing us. He knew we smoked. But as soon as he demanded we sell his future 5 kilos, we backed off again. As others noticed we didn't hang out with him anymore, they started to tell us how Klaus truly is. He started to live there as soon as another club member, since dead, lost his home, and lived on the farm over there. As for the rules of the club, it's not allowed. If he is allowed to, Klaus had to be too. Klaus lived there for 14 years, not because he got homeless or another stroke of bad luck in life, but because he wanted to live as inexpensive as possible. We learned that he had loads of debt. No wonder, considering how much he drank. We found out that this is the case since he was old enough to drink. He tried to rip everyone off of their money since, well, forever. His brother, his best friend, even his wife. Some say if she was still alive, he would sell his own mother. As the weeks went by, we learned more and more about him that he had done with this Nearly everyone who had joined the club, not only with us. We saw it too as a new member, who was also mentally disabled. Cut his hedge for him for 16 hours and got like 20 bucks. No thank yous, but Klaus started to dislike the way we stayed out of his way. So his response was to talk shit about us. He even threatened to tell the others that we smoke. It's illegal over here. I mean real, full-fledged lies. For example, we would owe him 200 bucks. We would do parties till late at night at the farm. We would hit our dogs. At that last point, we snapped. We bought a drone and made pictures of his weed plants and got police involved. Get them before they get you, you know? Klaus peacefully sat in the club's community house, drinking beer at 9 o'clock in the morning, as 10 police officers walked in, going directly into his garden. Little Klaus turned his head like an owl, and immediately stood up and walked outside. He asked one cop, "Hi, can I help you?" And they asked for his name. "Oh, Mr. Klaus, we're actually looking for you." Behind the police officer talking to him, the other cops raided his farm. Not to only find plants, but they discovered themselves that he lives there. Living room with obviously used bed, food, leftovers, a TV too. They asked him where was his address. He told them the address of his long-deceased brother. They sent a card to that address, but found no clue he could be living there. By the way, he also got money from the state, social benefits, and also meant to cover his rent. The rent on the farm is 30 bucks a year, so that's a huge no-no. Money fraud is one of the worst things you could do over here. The cops stayed at his farm for the next 4 hours, collecting evidence. The whole farm surroundings were patrolled by some cops, so word spread like a wildfire. Every single farm owner got over there to see what was happening, cheering that this guy finally got what was coming to him, after ripping off so many people. It was amazing. This dude had 14 years to make this farm his little hidey hole, making money out of it. He had split the whole community, gave us a bad name overall, and not even taking care of chickens. He just had them to sell the eggs, SMH. To his luck, he was clever enough to tell the cops it's only CBD. Still illegal, but not quite as much. So they had to send it in to test, buying him some time. The club held a meeting. Well, that was a shit show. As soon as this topic started, he said we planted them there. He only gave us the little plot. Most laughed, some said nothing. We voted for his eviction. Well, we had to, as the rule said so. He got 15 against him, just 3 voted for him to stay, so our revenge is not over. Keep you updated. Oh, wow. Oh, boy. Gotta refresh the page. Give me a second. Okay, there's no updates, it seems. No updates for this. Okay. Shame, but we'll see if we get an update later. Try to sexually harass my grandma. You might just take back a nub. Tried to post this to a different sub and was told to post it here. Recently learned about the revenge subreddits and have been enjoying some of the stories. As I've pondered things, I figured I'd share a few tales myself. This first tale, however, involves my grandmother. So, let me start this by saying, yeah, I'm on mobile and English is my first language, so please be harsh if you see any errors. Also, a short TLDR at the bottom. Setting, early 60s, medium-sized Midwestern city, local neighborhood bar. The title of this story comes from my grandma's old saying. See, my grandma always carried a switchblade in her purse for protection, and said if anyone tried to attack her, they might get her, but she's gonna take a piece of them with her. Hence the term, I'll take back a nub. Some context about my grandma before we get into story time. My grandma was born in the deep south back then, in the 30s. She was one of 4 sisters who I will refer to for the rest of this as the 4 sisters. My family decided to migrate up to a northern Midwestern city in the 50s. Just for clarification, my family is African American, so if you know anything about the United States history, you would understand why they would want to escape the Deep South during this time period. My grandma was 20-something when she moved north with her husband and my grandfather. The rest of her family, her sister's mother and uncle, also moved up north. Because of the housing discrimination, my grandparents were forced to live in the black neighborhood. The rest of my family also lived in this neighborhood and were basically within walking distance of each other. The thing to know about the 4 sisters is that they were all Spitfires. They are some of the most caring women you could know, and were all excellent mothers and grandmothers, but they were not to be trifled or messed with. If you crossed one of them, that might be your ass. This was especially true of my grandmother, who was all of 5 foot 1 inch and fairly petite. The 4 sisters were quite the characters, and it didn't take the neighborhood long to know that these 4 sisters, because of their crazy antics, they also loved hanging together on the weekends, either at one of the houses or sometimes at the local hot watering hole. On this particular night, my grandmother wanted to go out for a few hours with the sisters. Only one could go, the aunt. My uncle, grandmother's oldest son, was in charge of watching his siblings for a few hours on this lovely Saturday night. As my grandma dressed to the nines and headed down about half a mile to the local bar to meet up with her sister. This was a pretty small bar that got a lot of regulars. My grandma had been there dozens of times and has plenty of stories to tell about her time there with her sisters and also my grandfather. My grandma and Aunt C are lounging in the bar having a couple of drinks, cracking some jokes with some of the regulars when a new character is introduced to the scene. This guy's name is Leroy. He was a regular as well. To picture this guy, you would want to think about a guy as skinny as Jimmy Walker and about the height of Kevin Hart. Combine this and make him about the age of 40 and you have Leroy. Almost everyone will know Kevin Hart, but if you're not sure who Jimmy Walker is, look up the sitcom Good Times and you'll figure out who he is. Leroy was a regular at the bar, but again, Leroy was a regular at almost every bar in town. You see kids before the internet, online dating apps, and hookup sites. The way most people met was at bars. Our good friend Leroy was notorious for wanting to have one-night rendezvous with the ladies at the bar. Well, everyone knew his game, and after he had a few one-night stands with some of the ladies in the neighborhood, most now avoided him like the plague. This, of course, did not stop him from going to bars on the weekend, trying as best as he could to shoot his shot and hoping a lovely filly might come home with him for the night. Leroy had flirted with my grandma and aunt on previous occasions, and even though he was told that they were both happily married, this guy kept trying to have a conversation with them. As soon as he entered, he once again strolled over there, trying to see if he could get some action with either of them. My grandma quickly told him not to waste his breath, but he sat down anyway. What surprised my grandma was that behind Leroy was another dude. He was over 6 feet tall and handsome. My grandma honestly couldn't recall this guy's name, so we'll call him Jerk. My grandma knew right away that this Billy D. Williams wannabe was gonna try to sweet talk and charm his way into some lady's pants that night. It seems that he had his sights set on the first target, which would be, of course, my mother and Aunt C. It seemed like our good friend Leroy was gonna try to be Jerk's wingman. He started off with some small talk to get my grandma. Couldn't tell how gorgeous she was, and something about, you know, getting lost with the heater eyes and some other nonsense. My grandma said that he had diarrhea of the mouth, and pretty much let what he said go in one ear and find the nearest exit. My grandma quickly shut this clown down and let him know that she wasn't interested. So then he set his sights on my aunt. Now, you know my aunt can take care of herself. My grandma was always a little protective over her. Jerk made a comment about how nice my aunt's thighs were, as he looked lustfully at her. My grandma quickly told this fool that my aunt was married, and not interested in his nonsense. And this is where the story changes, and revenge comes into place. I'm gonna try to write the dialogue as best as she recalls it. Grandma: she's not interested, she is happily married. She can speak for herself, says the Jerk. Your legs must be tired, because you've been running through my mind all night. Yeah, this fool used to pick up line. Are you hard of hearing or something, or a little slow? I told you she's married and not interested. And the Jerk said, Bitch, you talk too much. Maybe I'll put my pants down your throat. Oh my god, what the fuck? Yes, he actually said, but I know I can't use that word. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where poop got real. Yes, everyone else in the bar knew you wouldn't and shouldn't talk to my grandma that way. She didn't play for that nonsense. This is one of those times where you could actually hear a pin drop as everyone got quiet. My grandmother exploded with an expected, What the fuck did you just say? My grandmother was seething with such anger, but the Jerk face played it off as it wasn't a good idea. My Aunt C knew it was about to go down. She grabbed my grandmother and started leading to the door. You see, my sister knew what many other people knew, and that is my grandmother kept a .38 snub-nosed revolver in her purse, and typically kept a very sharp switchblade wrapped up in her bra. My aunt tried to lead my grandmother out of the bar to avoid any more confrontation, but my grandmother wasn't having it. She was being pushed out the door by my aunt and other male customers, and my grandma seized a nearby beer glass and flung it at the Jerk. Fortunately, the glass didn't hit him and erupted close to his feet, but it certainly got his attention. Well, this over 6 foot, well over 200-pound man jumped out of the chair, storms toward my grandma, saying that he will kick her ass. My grandma replies, Bring it on! Bring it on! She eventually gets fully outside and decides to come outside. He's a little apprehensive because a couple of the neighborhood bar dudes had gotten up to see this, and he's afraid they might get involved. You know, since it's unacceptable for a man to hit a woman and all that jazz. The guy said they're not going to do anything and they just want to watch. My grandmother quickly pulled out the switchblade she had in her bra, unwrapped it from her paper, and looked him in the eyes and said, Come on, motherfricker! You would think at this point any civilized person might be apologizing further for crude language that he used earlier, or you would think that the guy, seeing that my grandmother had heels on, might just walk away, knowing that she's probably not going to chase after him. Do you think this clown chose either option? If you said he chose another option, you'd be correct. Let's give you a prize, son. What a woman, with a switchblade bearing down on him, he decides to stand his ground and doubles down by again calling my grandmother a bitch and telling her he's going to beat her ass. He next starts putting up his fist, ready, and it's about to go to town. No worries, no one says my grandmother has to fight fair. You see, what this clown forgot about was my aunt. While Jerk had his fists up, ready to start striking like he's Mike Tyson, My aunt conveniently took one of her high-heel shoes. She uses the heel to bash him right on the shoulder blades. Of course, this staggers our young jerk as he turns to look at my aunt, screaming obscenities. It gave my grandma time to come and slice this fool right in the side. As our young jerk howls in pain, my grandmother said to him, "Maybe I should slice something else off." The jerk staggered sideways, looking with at least two infuriated women, one with her high heels still in her hand and the other with a switchblade with the sight of blood on it. Don't worry, he wasn't too badly hurt as she sliced him, but he did stab him. By this time, a few other people are stepping in and trying to calm the situation down, and the jerk left the scene. The aftermath. My grandmother heard from others that the jerk went to the hospital and got treatment for getting sliced on the side. This was the 60s, so no cops were called, and if they had been called, they probably would have been pretty slow getting to the scene. No idea what he told the hospital staff and doctors regarding. Heard that he got patched up and was no worse for wear. Rumor has it that he ended up moving to Chicago a few months later. He never tried to get revenge on my grandma for this, so there's that. My grandmother said she wasn't going to tell my grandfather about what happened. He was a over-the-road tucker and was out of town when this event happened. But you know how things quickly go through the grapevine. He of course scolded her for this, but she just gave him a wicked smile and said that the asshole deserved it. And he got what was coming to him. So it was self-defense anyway. Not sure that's exactly entirely true, but that's what she's sticking with. My grandma continued going to that bar every once in a while, and it was a bit of a legend. Our friend Leroy ended up being the epitome of a deadbeat dad. Rumor has it that he has something like 10 kids with 8 or 9 different women. My grandmother still has the switchblade, and yeah, she showed it to me. It's somewhere in her massive collection of items now. Otherwise, I'd attach a picture of it. I also learned that my grandmother is a woman of her word, because she actually took back a nub in the form of an ounce of flesh from this butthole. Hopefully you enjoyed this story about my grandma. She's told me the story a few times and was a little fuzzy on a couple details, as she's in her 90s now, but okay, it's just the OP saying they'll answer questions. TLDR, Grandma goes to the bar with her sister to be sexually harassed by this butthole who can't take no for an answer. The moron uses obscenities and calls my grandmother derogatory names. So, she and my aunt get payback on the fool outside the bar by slicing him with a knife. Very nice. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, it helps the channel a lot. See you next time.